Good evening. A historic moment in India's defense indigenization ambitions. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo story, and we're, of course, talking about the commissioning of the INS Vikrant. The INS Vikrant, commissioned by the Prime Minister today in Cochin, marks a historic milestone in India's military ambitions. This is the largest warship built in India's maritime history and the first that has been indigenously built. 45,000 tons, a cost of an estimated 20,000 crores, 18 floors, 1,600 crew, 30 aircraft. The analogies can go on and on, the size of two Olympic pools, the size of two football fields. But the real discussion and the real conversation is what this means for the larger conversation about India's strategic interests and India's influence on the high seas. We're going to be talking to a group of experts today. Remember, this is also a day on which the Indian Navy unveiled a new insignia, a new naval flag. So, lots to unpack with an extremely distinguished panel. Let me introduce them on the program now. We're joined by Commodore Uday Bhaskar, who, of course, is one of our naval veterans and key strategic thinkers. I'm also delighted to welcome to the Mojo story for Captain D.K. Sharma, who's an old friend and who I interacted a lot with when he was the spokesperson of the Indian Navy. We're also joined, and it's a great honor to have him, is Commodore Jaideep Maolankar. He's a former chief test pilot and, of course, as we all know and we play those pictures, did the maiden landing of the LCA Navy on the INS Vikrant India. So great to have you with us, sir. And also
Good evening,
joining
Barkha.
us, good evening, sir. And also joining us is Lieutenant Commander Aishwarya Boddapati, who was part of an historic all-women crew that sailed around the world. So I think we have a really distinguished panel here. And before I start, in fact, with Commodore Maolankar, I just want to play those images for those members in our audience who may not remember this. This bears reminding. Commodore Maolankar made history when he did the maiden landing of the LCA Navy, as it was called, the naval version of the Tejas, on INS Vikramaditya in 2020. And I think that he would have a lot to say about this key milestone moment today, with his contribution to that milestone moment in the Indian Navy's history. So let me start with you, Commodore Jaideep Maolankar, if I can. As you looked at those images today of the Vikrant being commissioned by the Prime Minister, what is it that went through your mind and heart?
The strongest emotion was that you can feel a heavy hand on the, tipping the scale in favor of understanding what this aircraft carrier is all about. There's been so much of debate about do we need a third carrier? Should we have submarines instead? Why not more Rafales, etc., etc. But you need an event like this endorsed by the highest levels in the land and put out for everybody to see, to affirm that yes, we are not a sea blind nation, and we understand the effect and the potential of these kind of platforms and these kind of investments. So I like to look at it as investments rather than just specific platforms, because it's a lot more than just a flat sheet of steel and two propellers driving it.
Yeah. And the biggest, you talk about the heavy hand, the highest powers of government, the Prime Minister, of course, commissioned the INS Vikrant. What is the single most strategic sort of takeaway from this moment, Commodore Jaideep?
So as carriers go, it's a modest carrier, but it leverages uh, almost 60 years plus of naval aviation that we have. I'm talking about carrier aviation that we have nurtured in our navy. So we have a long pedigree, and this reaffirms that it's going to grow even more. It's going to adapt, but it's going to grow even further. You look at the the luxury of riches. We have the luxury right now of making our own carriers. We have the luxury of making our own fighter aircraft to go with those ships. And don't forget, there is this whole set of programs for aerial weapons. Now, this is actually something which very few nations enjoy the luxury of. At a time, they're forced to develop only one and adapt to the others. So this is actually something which should be viewed in that wider framework.
Yeah, if I'm not wrong, I think there are only five other countries. We're joining an elite club of five other countries globally, as Commodore Jaideep says. Let me bring in Captain DK Sharma, and then I'll come to Commodore Bhaskar and to Lieutenant Commander Aishwarya. Captain DK Sharma, as someone who has been the public face of the Navy for as many years as you were, this must be one hell of a proud moment. But in some ways, Commodore Maolankar has a reality check when he says it's a modest carrier. Would you agree with that description?
Good evening, Barkha. And I must say that I have been associated with this particular aircraft carrier, that is INS Vikrant, since 2009. I took up my appointment in 2009 February, and the first official visit was this, and which was laying of the keel by the then government. But the process had started much before. The approvals came in 2003, then in 2005 we were looking for the warship grade steel so that we don't have to import. We do not have to import this DMR 249 special grade steel so that the aircraft carrier should be actually ours. And then from 2005 to 2009, keel laying, and then we went for the launch of the ship in 2013. And then let me tell you, all these with this pandemic happening and you name it, slow and steady, yet we made it. It kind of became in the last 3 years, it kind of became a whole nation approach. Right from the biggest of the industrial houses, whether it is Bell, BHEL, L&T, you name it, right down to the micro and small industries.
I was reading somewhere that 500 Indian companies were actually involved in what is finally the INS Vikrant.
And you see the timelines which we were going through. People can't visit, there are lockdowns. And that is the time when the ship was getting ready for basin trials. And basin trials is when the ship is ready. You start the machinery one by one, like you were starting your car, checking each and everything. Barkha, it was such a humongous task, and which the Navy pulled with the the Cochin Shipyard Limited, 2,000 workers from there, 13,000 workers from the various industries, which we have said, 500 various kind of industries, Indian Navy, the Design Bureau, the CNC, you name it. It was being monitored with a tooth comb in Delhi that it has to go through, and that is how what we have achieved today.
So, of course, it's a personal milestone for you, Captain, but what is its national or geopolitical significance? I think that's what we have to explain to an audience that isn't, of the expertise that the four of you represent.
Okay, ma'am. Barkha, the point is now we have at least one aircraft carrier, one carrier battle group will be assured to the nation 24/7 for the next 2 decades. I can give you in writing. Now, Vikramaditya, with its component of destroyers, frigates, submarines, and integrals, along with whenever Vikrant now gets handed over to the fleet, will be available on either side of the Indian peninsula. One will look after the western seaboard, one will look after the eastern seaboard. We will share the assets, 10 MiGs here, 10 MiGs there, helicopters, and the various other, LR aircraft and all. This will ensure that our Navy and our strategic area of interest is always being covered adequately. And we can influence the operations right from the east coast of Africa to the Malacca Straits. That is what is the area given to us. So whether it is Southern Indian Ocean, Northern Indian Ocean, Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, Malacca Straits, Strait of Hormuz, Gulf, Persian Gulf, or the Madagascar, now we will be able to influence operations, and we are not influencing the operations as the Chinese are doing. We will be there to safeguard the economy, the trade, the energy flow. So this is what we are looking at. We are looking at freedom of passage. We are looking at rules-based order. We are not looking at influencing operations only for coercion, that you don't use that and all your natural resources are ours. That is what is happening in the South China Sea. So this is what we are looking at.
So Commodore Bhaskar, one of the interesting things was the British High Commissioner present at this commissioning, then releasing a video. The sort of the geopolitical dimension of this, where India is seen by the West as a countervailing force to China, where the next generation wars are going to be, possibly maritime, or if not wars, then I should say competing interests or theater of conflict, theater of competition, maybe is the more accurate phrase I should use. How do you see this moment?
Clearly, the commissioning of the Vikrant is a momentous day for all of India. And for us sailors in particular, I think it has a very distinctive relevance, salience. And I'm old enough to remember the first Vikrant, which was commissioned in 1961. So I think for our generation, from the first Vikrant to today, September 2nd, is very, very special. And I think it brings together many elements. And let me join my co panelists in adding that this is really a moment for national pride, because it's a manifestation of the resolve of the country against very challenging odds. In your opening remarks, you made this point that India now joins a select group of countries who are able to design and build their own aircraft carrier. And the fact that this happened during the COVID years is a special feather in the cap for Cochin Shipyard and for the entire Team Vikrant, whether it's the Navy's Design Bureau or the 500 odd MSMEs who are part of this effort. So, to that extent, a day of great pride, a day of great nostalgia for many of us, and we are all very glad that we could see it. The
Yeah.
unfurling of the tricolor, the ensign, and all of that. But on the geopolitical side, if I may, Barkha, let me just add again to what has been said. There is, I think, now an empirical reality that the Indo Pacific, as it is now being referred to, which is the continuum of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific through the Malacca and other water bodies, is now one of the most critical maritime domains in the world, particularly over the last decade, ever since there has been the kind of focus that we have seen, largely because of China's own assertiveness, both at sea and elsewhere. We in India have experienced Galwan. All of this has led to a certain sharpening of the geopolitical template, and India is located in a very favorable geography. There also is a confluence of interest now between India and some of the other like minded countries. You referred to the AUKUS, you also referred to the Quad. And we have the United States and Australia in one grouping. And along with Japan, we form the four-member Quad.
Mhm.
So, given these geopolitical realities, it is very important for India to acquire and hone its trans border military capability. And that is what the Vikrant is all about. That is what the first Vikrant was in 1961. And that is what the second, the new Vikrant of today, is all about. And this, not just the symbolism, but the substantive part where a country like India is able to bring to bear a certain degree of ordnance, firepower, surveillance in a radius of operation. I think DK spoke about the carrier battle group and what
Yeah.
kind of capability it represents. So, all of this, I think, contributes to ensuring that there is a certain credibility of India's naval and maritime presence within the Indian Ocean in the first instance. And if there is a need, my sense is that India would also be able to bring this kind of credibility to other maritime domains depending on the exigency.
Okay,
Barkha?
we'll get thanks, sir. We'll get deeper into, of course, the geopolitics, what this means for the larger indigenization ambitions. But let me bring in Lieutenant Commander Aishwarya, who was, of course, part of the all-women crew that sailed across around the world. Aishwarya, your thoughts?
So I think the 10 years that I served in Navy, I have seen the transition. Like I'm also a naval architect. So during my career in Navy, I've seen from the time I was inducted that there is this project IAC that's happening, right? So that's Indian Aircraft Carrier. And I've seen my colleagues, seniors, everyone who have given their hearts in designing this magnificent warship, and and today we see it coming into reality. It's like a dream come true for a lot of people in the Navy and across the country. So we have so slowly transitioned from a buyer's navy and to a builder's navy. And what better an example than a totally made in India Indian aircraft carrier. So absolutely wonderful, and I think this date is going down in history as called out by the honorable prime minister. And uh, and another thing that now that women are starting to go on board warships, someday it could also be true that there is a woman commanding this aircraft carrier. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a great thought, and so many things that were not imaginable before have begun to happen in terms of women and their ambitions in the military. And yes, so I hope that happens very much. Aishwarya, let me take this back to Commodore Jaideep now. Sir, you said it's a modest carrier. Can you explain what you mean? Why is it a modest carrier? Like there's so much excitement around it, and you are bringing a somewhat laconic reality check on our excitement. Do explain what you mean, sir.
Because I'm the only one on the panel who's had to actually land an aircraft on this. So it's all a matter of perspective.
Yes, yes.
That's one of the dichotomies that for everybody who doesn't fly, these ships are always projected as massive, the biggest, the largest, the somethingest. Even their names are these grandiose three-syllable names. But when it comes to the fact that it's built for one single purpose, and that's something which should never be diluted. Large deck aircraft carriers are built for operating conventional aeroplanes. Helicopters can operate from other platforms also. They do operate sometimes a little more efficiently from large decks, yes. But this kind of investment is primarily made when you want to bring proper modern aeroplanes to the fight. That is what actually conveys seriousness of your intention, whether it's a humanitarian role, whether it's an out and out combat offensive role, or it's simply a power projection, don't mess with me kind of, don't tread on me kind of a display. But uh, bringing aeroplanes to this thing is to the fight is the purpose of this carrier. So from that perspective, it is a modest carrier, and this is not a national secret. That the Navy has been asking for a 65,000 tonner. There has been this whole debate around these carriers are too small or too big or unaffordable or whatever. It goes back and forth. So while the mythology is about the size and the how big they are, uh, we must look at it always from the single laser focus of what air power does she bring to the fight.
Right. Very interesting, and I'll get responses to that. But I have one more question for you, because as you said, you are the only one among our panelists who's actually landed the LCA Navy on the INS Vikrant India. And my question is this. At that time, one of the points that you made was that when the LCA Navy was or expected to piggyback off the Air Force stages, that in itself made your life and the life of the Navy much more complicated. That limited you or inhibited you in some ways. That too was held as a key milestone in the indigenization process, as is the Vikrant commissioning. Where are we with that process? If you had to step back and look at the larger picture, given your own experience, Commodore Jaideep.
See, as far as indigenous weapons, you're really asking a question about indigenous weapons in general.
Yeah, I mean
As
our
far as
our
that,
our own process with it as a nation.
yeah, our own process. So again, it's no secret again that there are many issues related to that process. Rather than speaking about them in a negative tone, because I mean I can go on for hours about what all is wrong with it. I'd like to put it out rather as a what should we do about it? How should we
Sure.
approach the problem? Let's frame it in slightly more positive language. The first thing is that we must understand and absorb and embody the reason why do we want indigenous weapons. Whether you could justify it to yourself as saying no empire was ever built on an imported weapon. You could justify it to yourself on the basis of the logistics. You could justify it on the basis of the the adaptation to your specific war fighting culture. your specific circumstances, whatever be the reason, the issue of whether to build or to buy from outside should not be done on a transactional basis. That means right now what I can build has X capability, but actually I need X plus 10%, which is only available from outside. That leads to a lot of unnecessary angst, because it always pits development of a capability versus purchasing it off the shelf.
Right.
I like to look at it as nobody will ever sell you a world-beating weapon. They will always
Yeah.
sell you something that they can control, and everybody knows no nation ever looks forgets to look after its own interests. So this is one major thing that I would like to like people to understand. The second major point is that a lot of these kind of capabilities are very, very major systems of systems. I mean, these are I would shudder to even call them systems of systems, because there's something even larger than that. They're a full conglomerate of I mean, it's the full military industrial complex that you can see in front of you. Like I said, it's weapons, all the weapons programs, all the BBR missiles, all the anti-ship missiles, the BrahMos series, whatever you're talking about, all of them need to be adapted and usable from this ship. The ship itself, which itself is such a gigantic, complex piece of engineering, just putting together and making sure that people can maintain their aircraft the way they're supposed to, ensure the levels of serviceability, safety, the ease of operation, even in really rough weather, all that is maintained. It's a coming together of so many disciplines that, frankly, I don't think any one person actually even knows, can list out all the disciplines.
Yeah.
So the complexity, and let's not even go down the path of aircraft. The aircraft adaptation for you can't adapt an aircraft for a carrier without making some fatal compromises. You have to start from the ground up, and that's, I think, where your original question led off from. It needs to be built. It needs to be built to go to sea, which is not the same as landing it on a particular deck or taking it off from a particular ski jump.
Yeah.
It is much, much, much more than that.
And-
Fighting
and-
like the Navy likes to fight is,
Yeah.
I mean, it's chalk and cheese. I've spoken about this in other forums.
Yes.
Flying at sea, over the sea, is chalk and cheese as compared to other theaters and other scenarios. Not to run them down, just as those are equally highly specialized, this is humongously specialized.
No, I was just saying, listening to you, I think one appreciated more how much complexity would have actually also gone into building Vikrant. And then, of course, there's the long haul that you talk about and the complexity of it. I want reactions to everything you've said. I'll start with you, Captain DK.
Barkha, I'm nobody to give an explanation to what Mauser says. He is a master. I have seen him very closely. Navy had put so much of faith and belief in him that he was the one who was steering the LCA Navy. Unfortunately, now he has retired, and now the mantle is passed on to somebody else. But what he's saying
Not
is
unfortunate, very happily retired.
no. We wanted him for some more time, but then things don't happen the way we want.
Yeah.
But what he has said is the gist of it. That a lot needs to be done more. We need to now look forward whether now we get something from outside, which will defeat the purpose of Atmanirbharta. I'm now referring to Boeing or Rafale. We have our LCA Navy program, which was going on, and had we changed the engines or made it more powerful, or whatever recommendations Mauser gave, or we are looking towards the TED BF. Look, this platform is here to stay for 40 years. And also, I would urgently, I would say earnestly request all the planners in the government that we should not stop the line of manufacturing the ISC-2, because sooner than later, Vikramaditya will be needing more rest, and we should have, if we start now, act now. I was expecting that somehow the Prime Minister agrees to building the ISC-2 or gives us a approval or to the Indian Navy to start working on it. It will take time, but yes, now the timelines can be compressed and things move. And so in between now, we have the MiG-29Ks, but how long? And till the time we decide between the Boeing or the Rafale, or when does the TED BF comes, or how does the Navy LCA Mark II shapes up, all that is, it's best for Commodore Mao and Bhaskar sir to throw
Yeah.
comments on it. I'm actually not competent enough.
I want to pick up one other thing that happened today that we haven't spoken about yet, which is the new insignia, the new naval flag. And I want to bring in Commodore Bhaskar. Can we take the banner off? Yeah, there it is. So, of course, the Prime Minister called this the shedding of a colonial burden, Commodore Bhaskar. What did you feel when you looked at this before and after? Can we go back to it just for a second? It was very short, so I'd like to see it again. There it is. Commodore Bhaskar, go ahead. Hang on, sir. Yeah, go ahead.
A sense of nostalgia.
Mm.
Mainly because the ensign that is now showing on the left of the screen with the cross, which is often referred to as St. George's Cross, is something that we grew up with in the Navy since the late 60s. So that is a bit of history that we all remember, and let me say fondly, because traditions are very, very important for any military. And the Navy has its own, I would say, way of keeping these traditions alive. But at the same time, this is the 75th year of Indian independence, and there is a case for India to evolve and make its own symbols and flags. And in that sense, I think it is appropriate that we have what we think the received wisdom of the professionals, that we have the new naval ensign, we have the tricolor proudly fluttering there, and the Navy's own insignia. But I want to add one element here, if I may, Barkha, and use your platform. There was reference to the Maratha experience and a suggestion that some Maratha seals which were available have also been incorporated. But I just want to remind all of us through your platform that India's maritime heritage is very rich. You can go back to the BC period, 200 BC, 200 years before Jesus Christ. We had the Satavahana Empire in peninsular India. From about 200 BC to 200 AD, there was the footprint of the Satavahanas, and that was followed, if you remember, in the first millennium after AD, the Cholas, the Srivijayas. I mean, there was a time when the Bay of Bengal was called a Chola Lake. So personally, without in any way detracting from all that we have done today, the momentous day of Vikrant and the Indian Navy's new ensign, I thought that a recall of this particular phase of ancient Indian history could also have been perhaps incorporated. But that having been said, since you were asking about the new ensign, I think India must evolve its own symbols, its own signs, its own ensigns, and in that sense, I think it is very appropriate. Now, if there is a moment, Barkha, I want to pick up what Commodore Maolankar had said about the carrier.
Can I get Aishwarya on the flag and Captain DK on the flag, and then we'll come back to what Jaideep said. Go ahead, Aishwarya.
So I think when it comes to the flag, first thing is the logo of the Navy. Not many people are aware or have seen it very frequently. Now, when it comes on the ensign, it's something that we salute to every day. So that's something that's going to be remembered throughout the day, and will be carried forward throughout our life. So it's beautiful that now it reflects on the flag, and it's there for everyone to see.
DK, Captain DK Sharma.
We have grown, like what Bhaskar sir has said, that we grew on this. We got commissioned and then we got retired. Yes, it has got a lot of nostalgic value with us, but yes, it's time now to move on. And why not with our own thing? And very correctly and very aptly, it has been dedicated to Chhatrapati Shivaji, and that is where the stamp, the Raj Mudra of the Maratha Navy has come in. If you see this octagon, it has got 8 edges, or 8 sides, which also point towards the intercardinal directions: north, south, east, west, and then intercardinal things. So yes, it is our own thing. And another thing which has happened is the fouled anchor, which we used to have, the naval emblem. Now from there, the anchor is not fouled now. The chain which used to be there, which is again a legacy from the Royal Navy, that has been removed. So Shano Varuna remains, Satyamev Jayate remains, the lions remain, and of course our national flag remains. Well, this is a new beginning, and we all salute to that.
Yeah. Commander Bhaskar, you wanted to come in on Commodore Malankar's larger argument about indigenization. Go ahead. So,
Just again to extend the point that Jaideep has made, that this is a very complex task. And I think we should salute everyone who was involved in bringing the Vikrant up to this point. But at the same time, I think the challenge ahead must also be recognized. And that is the point of Jaideep that I wanted to extend, which is that when you look at the Vikrant today, to use broad thumbnail figures, I think it's a matter of great pride that almost 90% of the entire effort and equipment that has gone into making the Vikrant float. There are three elements to a warship. First is to make it float. The second is to make it move. And the third is to make it fight. So if you look at the first component of the flotation part, India should be proud that 80 to 90% is indigenous. And this is where I think, apart from the CSL, all the small guys, the MSMEs, each of them has brought something to the table. And I was just thinking this morning when we were looking at the visuals and reference being made to the smaller enterprises, there's a little leaf from the Ramayana. If you remember the bridge building exercise that Lord Ram embarks upon, there is reference to a small squirrel that also wants to come and contribute, and a very, very evocative tale of the squirrel going and wetting its tail in the sea and then bringing sand and so on. So, like that, the Vikrant symbolizes this effort of small and big. And in that sense, 80 to 90% is a big deal. But then at the same time, we should, I think, also acknowledge that when it comes to making the ship move, the propulsion, and we have a naval architect with us on the panel, which is very good. She will perhaps agree with this point. This is a very serious challenge for the Indian Navy in terms of all propulsion, gas turbines, and so on. We have only touched about 45 to 50%, or maybe a little more, depending on the nature of the platform. In some cases, we may have gone up to 60, 65%. Again, there is a road ahead that we need to traverse. The real challenge is in making a platform fight. And that is where I think Jaideep's point about the fact that today we do have the MiG-29, but we are also aware that it has certain constraints. So for the Vikrant to acquire its optimum credibility as an air power platform, we will have to make the transition. I think both between DK and Jaideep, they have made this point about what choice or what decision will be taken in relation to the other two aircraft, one of French origin, the other of US origin. But there is a third stage, which is the Indian Tejas, the LCA. And that's, I think we all need to salute somebody like Jaideep for a test pilot to bring a new aircraft onto a carrier. I mean, every fighter pilot who lands on a carrier needs a salute, but people like Jaideep need a special salute. That is a very historic kind of moment. And I think for India, that is the challenge, that we need to have our own indigenous fighter, indigenous in every sense, including the engine, which is again a big challenge. Whether you talk about an engine for a fighter aircraft like the Tejas, the LCA, or you talk about engines for the Vikrant, or you talk about engines for other destroyers, I think this is an area where India needs to really invest, because in ordnance, in fighting, we are perhaps at 20% in terms of the indigenous effort, if you look at it holistically. And I think that's what the Prime Minister was drawing attention to this morning in his address also, that we have a long, but let me stop here, Barkha. It's a long sort of.
No. But there are two really sort of nuggets in there. One, the lovely story of the squirrel. So salute also to the squirrels, metaphorical squirrels, who made this moment possible. But it's a great description. The warship has to eventually get to the point where it's a fighting warship. That's why it's a warship. And I just want to bring in Commodore Jaideep there before we start taking last comments. If you'd like to respond, that eventually, right now we're talking about MiG-29Ks being the fighter jets for this warship. Commodore Bhaskar is saying we've got to get to the point where the fighter jets are indigenous. Just want your take on that, sir.
It's very clear. I think I've played shown my cards to everybody that I firmly believe you have to make everything yourself, because you've seen the kind of wars, the kind of consumption of equipment that occurs in the name of wars right now is unbelievable. So there is no way that you can sustain this if you are importing things from outside. There is just no way. Let's not even talk about being beholden to any other country which may have its own interests, maybe divergent, maybe convergent, or whatever. You have to convey your own seriousness. You have to bring your own food when you land up at a potluck. You can't expect to be served. So as far as I'm concerned, taking an aircraft which is, they're wonderful aeroplanes. They're phenomenal. I had the pleasure of flying a Hornet a long time back, and the Rafale is just magnificent. There's no doubt about that. But how many will we be able to buy? How many weapons will we be able to buy? What restrictions will we have to live with in order to exploit them? Even if they're completely supportive of us, you end up signaling your intentions to go to war 6 months from now by your logistics buildup. I mean, professionals speak logistics, not tactics. So when you seriously intend to go with your big guns, the logistics activity which precedes it is actually the biggest telltale. Now you cannot hide it if it is heading out overseas. So there are many such small things, and we have to even adapt it now to our own new style of personnel induction. When you change the profile of the personnel, I'm talking about the Agniveer thing, you have to adapt the equipment to suit that profile. If you have equipment designed for a different profile, the match doesn't work. So it's a lot of things going on.
That's very interesting. And of course, we must also remember that Russia, on which we are dependent, so dependent historically for sort of defense acquisitions, global politics could change that. There's going to be massive pressure on India to step away from that. So there's all sorts of things from the micro to the macro going on. I do have to take last comments, but Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia shared a slice of history on Twitter, and I want to share it with all of you. Commander Bhaskar, you referenced the old Vikrant. This was the last signal from the old Vikrant. In a few hours from now, I will come to rest. But in these 36 years, I think I did my best. For my fleet and navy, I earned a great name. That's why they call me the Lady of Khulna fame. With admin and ops support coming from you and the fine skills of the dockyard too, the Western fleet, the best in the side, serving for you all we did with pride. Now I am going, I bid adieu. And with all good wishes coming from you, though I will be striking down the pennant from Maine, I do hope Vikrant will be with you soon again. This was just such a lovely moment. I couldn't help but pulling it out. And I want to start with you, Commander Bhaskar, because I'm sure that makes you somewhat nostalgic. That's the last signal there. Commander Bhaskar.
I think this is a great recall. We should be grateful to Vinod Bhatia, our former DGMO, a great example of jointness also, that he shared this with everyone. I remember this signal, it was 97. And I think those of us who recall the old Vikrant to where we are now, there is that adage that old ships never die. And I think for India, for the Indian Navy in particular, the saga of the old Vikrant and today the commissioning of the new Vikrant is a momentous day in more ways than one. And as they often say in the Navy, fair winds, following seas, and Godspeed as far as the new Vikrant is concerned.
Yeah. Lieutenant Commander Aishwarya, your thoughts, ma'am?
So the day Tarini was inducted, its first sail was from Goa to Mumbai, and when we reached Mumbai, we were denied entry because that was the day Vikrant was being decommissioned. So I think. I think it's great to see the rise of Vikrant again, and so many memories come back when I think about it. And like like the co-panelist said, fair winds, following seas, and many fathoms below the keel to Vikrant.
Captain Sharma?
The thing is that this day will go down as a red letter day. Vikrant, as they say, the old ships never die. So the soul was always around, and today it is the rebirth of INS Vikrant, and all the very best who sail in that. And I must also say that the Captain Vidyadhar Harke, is my cadet. I have trained him in India.
Oh,
So I'm
that's
very
lovely.
proud of it. Yeah.
That's quite a moment, Captain D.K. Sharma. Fantastic. Commodore Jaideep, I'll give you the last word. From one Vikrant to the other, what's coming next?
So I've flown from the old Vikrant, of course, in her Sea
Oh,
Harrier
wow.
adapted form.
Yeah.
And, she was never a very comfortable ship. She was at the end of her life. She had gone through so many refits, but she was never a very comfortable ship. But the spirit on that ship was phenomenal. You could feel it. And in every metric that mattered, the rate at which we flew sorties, the amount of night flying we did, all of those things, I guess because the ship was uncomfortable, you had nothing better to do, so let's fly a lot. So she produced, you could feel the spirit in that ship. I understand a piece of that metal has been welded into the keel of the new Vikrant. So I'm hoping that part is contagious. But just as a last word, I think the Navy's fair winds and following seas should be adapted to headwinds and following seas for an aircraft carrier, because we need headwinds and not tailwinds.
Touche. Thank you, Commodore Jaideep, Captain D.K. Sharma, Commodore Uday, Bhaskar, and Lieutenant Commander Aishwarya. Pleasure, learned so much from all of you. Great day. No matter the ifs, the buts, the caveats, more to come. The indigenizing the fighter jets next. A moment of history, a slice of history. And I think we stand here today as proud Indians. Thank you very much, everybody. And to our audience, see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.